Okay, welcome to episode 2 of Design on Purpose. Today we're going to talk about brand and what is brand, what that means in today's terms in the branding world, and we're just going to explore and chat about what the different aspects of branding is and the different sort of ideas behind it. So Rix, what is brand?
Well, brand is everything. It's definitely changed a lot in the last 10 years or so, especially. But it kind of encompasses everything. It's kind of like when you do like a UX course or something like that. What they'll usually show you is like all these different things of the business with a big kind of circle around it and saying basically everything is user experience, or like everything is part of that experience, because it's looking at it in a holistic view, and I think brand is very much the same way. It's everything, every experience, every feeling, every kind of touch point or interaction that you have with an organization, whether it's even working there as an employee and what it feels like to be within the organization, to what it feels like to walk into a branded environment or a store, or what kind of music is playing, or and obviously it goes into the literal, like kind of the most obvious things like the logos and the colors and the types, but it's so much more broad than the actual visual identity, which I think a lot of people kind of get hung up on, is that is the branding, but it's just so much more than that.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely something we come across often, is like, how do you, so if someone comes to us and says, oh, we need a rebrand, and what that is, it's like, well what is that? Is it a rebrand, or are we evolving a current brand? Like, there's already a brand that exists, and it's kind of like unpacking what is the brand, because people, as you say, some people think it's actually what we look like, and a lot of the time we discover that it's not really about the outside. Like, first, in order to create the outside of the brand, the actual stuff that you can see, the visual aspects of a brand, like the logo, color palette, typography, photography, direction, all that sort of stuff, art direction, first you need to know, like, for us anyway, we need to know, and also for the company or the organization to know who they are in order to create a brand. Because a brand is essentially, it's communication as well, right? It's like every little bit inside that broad sphere is a message or some sort of piece of communication that's a non-visual message. It's something that you can't, like, that's intangible, you can't see it. It's something internal that is then getting projected outwards through visual branding. So I guess brand, like, we're looking this up before, like, where the word brand in essence just means to show ownership of something through a mark. Like branding cattle, or putting a mark in pottery, in clay. It's a way to be able to identify, at the very essence, is a way to identify where the thing that you're interacting with or experiencing comes from. But now these days, it's like, it's much more complex than that. It's like, if you get a product, or like Apple, for instance, like if you put a different logo on an Apple product, you can still tell it's Apple, right? So the branding is actually so deeply ingrained, or the experience, like rocking up to a store.
Yeah, even if there was no logo around, it's like the
language, the way that people present themselves that work for the company and identify with the brand or the company itself. There's so many little intangible, complex little bits that are now part of your brand. It's not just the stamp. To show where, but it still is a stamp to show where something's coming from.
It's like you get on
it's not so obvious anymore.
It's like you get on an airline, like Singapore Airlines, for example, and they bring you like those hot towels, and they have a certain scent to them. But that is
Yeah,
brand
that's
because
branding.
that smell is like attached to that brand, and that is
Yeah,
part
that's
of their branding.
Supposedly Subway have the same thing with that smell you walk past.
Yeah.
That's branded smell.
Yeah,
It's pretty gross, but
that's interesting, and it's kind of like, I guess the dimensions of brand have changed so much. You know, with the digital age, it's like, you know, back in like Don Draper's day, you would have a logo, and it would be like on your, you know, your shop front or in your magazine article or your, you know, printed material, and it's kind of like one dimensional, and but now there's so much more depth to it because it can't be static. It's got to have its own kind of voice and movement, and you know, there's so many more layers to a brand these days than what you would have had back in those days.
Yeah, definitely. Because I guess back in those days it was more reliant on printed material in order to market something, which is one of the first stages to engage with a brand. But now it's like there's so many different ways to engage with an audience. So there's all these different styles or different avenues of branding that all relate and all work together to create a brand experience. That made me think about like brand as well. These days, it's like there's so many different options. Like back in Don Draper's day, you know, there's only a few companies selling, you know, a similar product. Like if it's a washing detergent, there's the main washing detergent brand. These days, it's like there's hundreds of thousands of washing detergents that you can potentially choose, and it's up to the company and the brand to create a point of difference for themselves that is going to relate to their potential customers or their audience, right?
Because the product design is also the brand, right? Like the design of the actual product is the brand. It's like, if you're looking at like washing detergent, like you just brought up, it's like, you know, even the way, like, is it eco-friendly? Is it made of, you know, natural ingredients? And, you know, that essentially, the makeup of that is the brand, which then is then reflected in the packaging and the messaging and everything. So it's all kind of, it's all brand. Yeah,
it's all brand. It's like brand reflects the business or the organization and vice versa. It's like the brand is like, there's a lot of things that are business decisions too that are more strategic, but they come through in the brand, and also the other way around.
Business model's brand.
Business model's brand, exactly. You can have a business model that can be used as an experience or a way to communicate or to communicate with the outside world people are gonna resonate with, if it's something innovative or something more socially conscious, progressive ways of doing things. They might not have anything to do with what the company looks like. It could be a company that doesn't even really rely on a logo as their, you know, identity. It's more about their message and their values primarily to get that first sort of to get the ball rolling and really stand out in that sort of sea of similarity.
Yeah, that's interesting, and it has been kind of eye-opening since working with some of our clients, like how when we go into this work together, they don't understand that brand encompasses so much, like company culture and product design and some of the other things that we've kind of touched on. But and when you see that kind of click in their head of like, you know, how it is a part of the whole kind of structure and foundation, and it's funny to have those conversations. And I think Philippe said, you know, it's leadership, business model, brand are like the three kind of key things to have a successful organization. And he didn't realize it. He said, I thought it was leadership and business model, but it's actually leadership, business model, and brand.
Yeah, that is interesting. Because a lot of and we're obviously really passionate about this, but it's like the whole cultural aspect. Like, how do you build a culture within an organization? Like, that's a good move for business too, to drive an outcome. But it's all branding. It's like how it's how people relate to one another, and also with the organization, within the organization, and then externally again. And then then there's even other things like brand artifacts that drive culture and other elements like that, like having physical tools or artifacts that relate to maybe the founding story of the organization or to some sort of belief system or value that is physically in the presence of a working environment that stimulates that and keeps driving it and bringing the attention back to the brand message and the core values of the organization. We love our our little artifacts.
Yeah, we do. We do. Yeah, and remember that one office that we went to when we were in San Francisco, the Gusto office, and and you walked in and it was a shoeless office.
Office.
And you got a pair of Gusto socks when you walked in there, and everyone in the office, like, it was a massive office, huge, and in the dog patch there and down near the water, and the everyone was just in socks, and that's brand.
And even remember they did that presentation about the interior design of their space that they co-designed together within the organization. They were really driving, like, the whole objective was to how to embed the brand in the working environment, and they had all these different kind of things like murals, the way the desks were, the different kind of working spaces.
The shop signage, like, for all the wayfinding.
They had like motorbike helmets with like calligraphy or like signwriter sort of scripts that they would share around each month. And it's like,
there were awards, right? Like,
there are awards, and they're the kind of things, like, that's branding. Like, they're things that's like, for us, we didn't work there. We got invited into that space to go to a presentation, and we experienced the Gusto brand.
And here, like, even at WeWork, it's like we were lucky enough to travel around the States for a bit last year, and we visited some of the other WeWorks in some other cities, and the feeling of them is very much the same across the board. Like, they all have their little, flavors based on the city, but the like the design, interior design, and the feeling of them, like, you feel like you're in.
Architecture is their brand.
Yeah.
Like, it was founded by, one of the co-founders was an architect, so obviously that came through in what makes a WeWork look like a WeWork is their architecture. It's very distinct.
And then other things, even like with the staff and how they greet you, and the ease of use and the consistency, and like, walking in there and that you're going to instantly have access to the Wi-Fi, and
you've got the same app to book the same book rooms. You rock up to a similar looking building and off you go, and like, even that, the technology, the architecture, they're all aspects of the WeWork brand, right? It's not really like, the logo is something, and it does mean something for WeWork, but that's not really what they're hanging on to as a company, is their like visual or their graphic identity, which also they do have a really distinct graphic identity too inside WeWork. They have a lot of similar murals.
Black and white.
Black and white, but it's not so much about the logo, right? It's the full brand experience, and also their mission, right? Which is also quite unique for in the co-working industry.
So how do you make sure that you choose the right kind of linchpin, or the right kind of like core to base all this around? Like, what is at the center?
Well, like what we've discovered, there's a few things at the center, but what's really at the center is the purpose. So having a clear purpose, the reason why you exist, is a great place to start start defining your brand, because once you're clear on your purpose, it's very easy to invite other people into your space or your brand or your company, your organization, and they're going to have that's already creating an experience, right?
That's right.
And the experience that you create internally is the experience that you're going to project externally, right? So, I think,
and it's like, well, what we're talking about there, the purpose is like the reason you exist. It's the difference that you're trying to make in the world. So for us, our purpose is to reach our full potential, and by enabling others to realize theirs. So that's about going through a co-design processes of realizing their potential, but also in physically realizing it through the execution of a brand. And like going back to we're talking about our lobster, like this is an artifact to us because it very much represents our passion for purpose-driven organizations and developing brands based on purpose. Because a lobster's a soft, mushy creature. It lives inside a rigid shell, but it has to go through a process of molting, so it will actually outgrow its shell. And while it's still inside, and it goes through heaps of stress and has to push out the shell. And during that time, it's vulnerable, it's uncomfortable, it's got to hide under a rock, it's vulnerable to prey. But then when the shell grows back, it's like quite significantly larger. So it's
also,
really
and it doesn't necessarily have to be about growing larger either.
But it's about creating a bigger shell for your organization to grow in, like more room to move. It's like you don't necessarily have to be locked into a certain industry. But if you have your purpose, it gives you more freedom to create products and relationships and different, enter different markets based more on the purpose rather than, you might start with one product and you work on that for a while and maybe you want to pivot, but you can't pivot because you've pigeonholed yourself into that particular business or business model or product or whatever it is. So that's why our metaphor is of the lobster.
Yeah, and that's interesting too. Like with the basing brands on purpose from a visual aspect too, like from a logo aspect, brand marks. You can see a lot of companies that will create a business, right? Like let's say it's a chair company, and they put a chair in their logo. So that's not purpose driven, right? Because they're very much the what driven. So if suddenly new research gets shown and chairs are no longer good for you, should be standing, and they've got a chair in their logo, yeah, maybe that's cool, maybe it's not, but it's probably going to start sending mixed messages, and it's not really setting yourself up for longevity and whatever the future brings. So and that kind of brings me to a thought, is that like a logo or an icon or a symbol or any of these things, they are just, when you look at them without context, they're just an image, right? They're just a graphic representation of something. Can be abstract, can be figurative or literal. Sorry, it's like, but a logo is essentially like an empty vessel for a company to give meaning to or fill with meaning and bring life into. The Nike logo at the beginning was a tick, right? But now we know this as this whole movement with so many different, like related to all these different things, right? Everyone's an athlete, yeah. It's like now that has so much more meaning. So it's about creating. It's not so much about creating something that is perfect or it doesn't, like these are come after the fact, like creating something that's beautiful and aesthetically pleasing. There's some aspects of creating a nice logo or a nice brand mark, but before that is really working out what is a symbol or a device that we can grow into, similar to with the lobster. It's like creating that space to grow within. I think that's powerful. It's cool.
So I mean, I think that kind of is a good first summary for brand.
Yeah.
And next time we
can talk about this for a while. So we'll think back and look at, maybe listen back to this and work out some more points, or maybe if anyone has any suggestions of things that they would like us to sort of touch on regarding brand or brand identity or purpose or anything like that.
Leave it in the comments.
Leave it in the comments or drop us a line, and we'll sort of start fleshing these things out in more detail as time goes by. So thanks for listening to the second episode of Design on Purpose. Any last words?
Ouch.